Shalom, shalom. Before I begin this lesson, all praise, honor, and the glory goes to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles, bishop, and elders of Great Millstone that rule well, and peace and blessings be multiplied on all you brethren teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. Shalom to the hopeful elect, 144,000, and the rest of the elect out there, shalom. I'm the brother Dama Agabar here with another lesson, Lord willing to edify through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Yahweh Shai. All right. And this is going to be, a lesson going into how the Israelites became uncircumcised. OK, because now you have these Genesis guys teaching that the uncircumcision in the New Testament was all heathens. They were not Israelites, but they were the actual heathen, man, which these guys are waxing worse and worse. But, it is what it is. But, we're going to continue to edify and continue to give the correct breakdown and the right doctrine as concerning, this mystery of the Gentiles. And this is something that, these Christians, I believe through the Spirit, they really see it now. But, they're so demonic and they're so just, seared with a hot iron that, salvation is for everybody, is that they just won't, be, honest with themselves or just truthful in general and come to the realization that the uncircumcision that was spoken of in the New Testament was dealing with the Israelites that became uncircumcised. And I'm gonna go and again, if you don't know the history of the Greeks, if you don't know the history of the Maccabees, when you go in the book of Daniel, don't understand the history of that third beast, which was the Alexander and the Greek Empire, and what happened to the Israelites during that time period, you can't just hop into the New Testament and then think you're going to understand all this talk about the Gentiles and the Greeks. And there's neither Jew nor Greek. And we've broken this down ad nauseum plenty of times, man. But like I said, these Christians, they just want to be intellectually dishonest, and they don't really want to accept the truth of the matter because, like I said, they're seared with a hot iron, and they're just, the Lord has put blinders on them. And now you got Hassad and that nigga, Deacon Dumbass. Now they're coming with this complete Christian doctrine that the uncircumcised in the New Testament were the actual heathens, man. And these guys are really trying to shut up the kingdom of heaven, man, from Jake, and trying to open it up into the Gentiles, which we know these guys sold out. They're a bunch of bug outs. They're weirdos. And if they ain't careful, man, they could be next on the chopping block, if you know what I'm talking about. So I just want to go into this. I'm going to try to, do it with as few words as possible. And just one thing you have to understand when you're dealing with the whole, there's no neither Jew nor Greek. Again, you have to understand what happened to the Israelites during the Greek Empire. You have to understand why the Maccabees was going to war and what they was fighting for. You have to understand who Paul, when he was going on all his missions and all his journeys, was trying to reach and trying to bring back, to the fold, man. All right. You have to understand when you read about when you read about the book of Ephesians, the Corinthians, the book of Romans, those were Israelites in those foreign lands that had fallen away, that had become uncircumcised, that had turned away, as I'm going to show you during the Greek captivity, that completely sold out, that completely became apostates, that completely became Greeks, but not by nationality, not by, genealogy, but in the flesh. OK. And you have to understand this, man. It's a very easy and simple thing to understand. But again, we're dealing with heavy apostates, sellouts, bug outs, and doctrines of devils, man. And you're going to have a lot of bugged out Israelites follow these guys and, be led astray and be destroyed. But that's on them. But hey, we're doing this for the edifying of the elect and to defend the true gospel of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. So without further ado, I'm just going to start here in First Maccabees. I'm going to read up and I'm going to jump down to the 48th chapter. All right. So let me read up. This is First Maccabees 1 and 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. And again, when you go into the actual Bible, right, when you read about the book of Daniel, when he goes into the four beasts, you don't find the history of the Israelites during the Greek captivity in the Bible. You have to go to the Apocrypha, which was taken out by the Bible destruction group, because these devils knew that the answers are right there. The answers are in the Apocrypha. The history of what happened to us during the Greek period is all explained right there. And it's a very simple thing to understand. So again, remember, another thing you have to understand is when you're when you're dealing with the scriptures in the Bible, you have to understand it's all about the Israelites, man. All right. You can't lose sight of that. You can't, get lost in believing that, the New Testament it actually means it was an actual whole New Testament that had nothing to do with the Israelites whatsoever. You see, it was a New Testament because it was better promises that was given to the Israelites, because after we broke the first covenant, having to keep the law, statutes, and commandments that was written on stone, because we were never able, because of the flesh and because of these bodies, to keep it 100%. We would always, we basically failed. So the Lord had to make a new covenant, but built upon better promises. And even when you read that in Romans, the 8th chapter, that new covenant is only for the Israelites. So don't get lost or get deceived by these Christians trying to tell you that, oh, well, the New Testament is for all nations now because the Israelites broke the first covenant. But it's clearly evident that when you read who the second covenant is, the new covenant is given to, it's clearly is given to the Israelites. But anyways, so let's go with this. This is 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves, so did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. You see? And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. And you have to remember, the Israelites were put in captivity under the kingdom of the Greeks. You see, this is why when you start reading the New Testament, when Paul starts telling those Israelites that were calling themselves Greeks, that had became Greeks, again, not by nationality, not by lineage, but in the flesh, man. You had a lot of, well, I was going to explain. You had a lot of Israelites that forsook their Hebrew Israelite nationality and the covenants and the laws, statutes, and commandments, and literally became Greeks, man. Now, of course, a lot of it was done out of fear, out of them being threatened, and it was forced upon them by Antiochus and these Greeks. But you had a lot of Israelites that didn't sell out, that didn't become Hellenized. That's why you got the book of Maccabees and you read about all the wars, how they fought to be zealous and to uphold the law, statutes, and commandments. And that's why when you go into the New Testament, when you read about the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the circumcision and the Israelites that still was keeping true to the covenants, it was those same Israelites that revolted against becoming Hellenized. And they looked at those Israelites that became Greeks as sellouts, as uncircumcised, as Gentiles, as heathens, man. Because remember, it's written in the law, if you don't keep the Passover, if you don't circumcise yourself, it's in the law that you will be cut off from being, you'll be cut off from Israel. You'll be a no people. And they looked at those Israelites during this Greek period that sold out, that became Greeks. As I'm going to read you, the circumcision looked at those Israelites that became Greeks as heathens, as a no people, and they despised them and then hated them, man. That's why it was such controversy when you read in the New Testament, when Paul was seen, which I'm going to read that, when he was seen eating with those Gentiles, with those Greeks, they looked at him like he was out of his fucking mind, man. And they were saying that you brought these heathens, these Greeks into the temple, not because they were literal heathen, but they were Israelites. But again, they had became Greekified. They had stopped following the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. They were counted as a no people. So even though Paul was bringing them around, the circumcision, they knew that those people, those Greeks, those Hellenes that they were bringing around were Israelites. They knew that they were Israelites, but again, they looked at them as a no people. They looked at them as sellouts, as people who had no part of the covenant or salvation. They were through. They were literally looked at them as heathen, even though through their lineage and through their true nationality that they were Israelites, man. You see? So it says, at verse 11, and in those days, now pay attention. Now, in those days, there went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. So you had wicked Israelites that said, look, we're going to make a deal with these heathens. We're going to totally just sell out. We're going to join ourselves to the heathen. We're going to put away our customs. We're going to become Greeks. We're going to shave our beards. We're not going to get circumcised. We're going to worship these pagan gods. We're going to do whatever they're wanting us to do to, to be assimilated with them. And it says, and in those days there went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. And you have to remember, these Israelites, these wicked Israelites, when they made this covenant with the heathen, it wasn't just, a wham bam. It was through many generations. You had a lot of Israelites that sold out, that became Greeks, that had families that raised their sons Greek, their daughters Greek for many generations, man. So after about 3, 4, 5 generations, those Israelites totally were turned out. They were totally Hellenized and Greekified, man, to where they didn't speak the Hebrew anymore. They literally spoke Greek. They worshiped the Greek gods. They offered up swine's flesh. They participated in the festivals of Bacchus. They were complete, total heathens, man. But again, not through lineage, but in the flesh. It says, so this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the custom of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised. Now you have to pay attention to this. These are Israelites they're talking about. Now, did you have other heathen nations that was around that got swallowed up in the Greek captivity? Yeah, I'm pretty sure, you had Moabites and Ammonites and Hamites that became Hellenized, that got conquered by the Greeks and that sold out too. But in this particular passage is talking about Israelites that made themselves uncircumcised. And when you read all the way up in the New Testament, during the Roman Empire, these same Israelites that became uncircumcised and that made a covenant with the heathen, when you go into the Roman Empire, these were those, many generations in the future. These was these same Israelites. When you fast forward to the time of Yahushua and the apostles were still living after the fashion of the heathen, man. It says, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. And this wasn't just during the Greek captivity. It went all the way into the Greco-Roman, even into the Roman Empire, man. You had Israelites that was totally out there just living like heathens, man. And after many generations, they raised, the children of these Israelites that sold out during the Greek Empire were totally oblivious to the fact that they were Israelites, man. And this is who the apostles and them were going to, which, we'll get to that. Let me jump down here to verse 48. All right. And it says, here we go. It says, here we go. This is First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 41. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. You see? For the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and the holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And you had many Israelites that fell under this wicked decree. All the way up into the Roman Empire, you had a lot of Israelites that was so forward therein, they never, returned back to their true customs and true nationality, man. You see? It says to the end that they might forget the law, and many of the Israelites forgot about the law. That's why, again, Paul was going to Ephesus, to Corinthians, to Rome, to where else? Corinth, man. Because what? He was trying to bring back these Israelites that had been living like heathen for many, many, many years, man, and many, many generations. It says, and whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. You see? And the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them to the wit that one to wit everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. And that's where you get, the Maccabees, going to all these wars and fighting to be zealous for the laws and for the commandments, because they didn't want to sell out. They held true to the customs, man. But you had a lot of these Israelites that that flip side, man, that literally became Greek and stayed Greek and lived that way for many generations, man, going all the way up into the New Testament, man. Okay, so, and this is just history you have to understand, so you can understand the mystery of the Gentiles, so you can understand why the things that were being written in Corinthians to the Ephesians, who those letters was being directed to. It was those Israelites that became uncircumcised, man. You see? And if you don't understand this, man, you are going to be confused. You are going to be lost in the sauce. You're not going to understand the scriptures, man. Okay. Now, what do I want to start with this? What do I want? Let me see something. Let me see. Let me start here. Just let me get this in Ephesians, all right? And remember, you have to understand the book of Ephesians was written to all the Israelites that was living in Ephesus, man. So you have to remember, this is who Paul, the Ephesians that Paul was talking to was these Israelites that had became uncircumcised during the Greek captivity. You fast forward to the time of the Ephesians, these were those Israelites that was living in Ephesus that Paul was going to trying to bring back to the Commonwealth. That was, telling them that through Yahweh's sacrifice that, they were able to be reconciled, man. That they were able, through their faith in Hamashiach Yahushai, they could return and receive salvation and forgiveness of sins, man. All right. The book of Ephesians wasn't written to straight up heathens, man. The uncircumcised that they were speaking about in the New Testament were these Israelites, like I read, that made themselves uncircumcised by following after the ways of the Greeks, leaving off from their Hebrew Israelite custom and nationality and law, statutes, and commandments, and totally became full blood clot heathens, man. All right. And this is Ephesians chapter. Let me see something. Let me read up a little bit. See, and it says what? Made alive in Hamashiach. Who are the only ones that can be made alive in Hamashiach? Yahushai are the Israelites, man. This is Ephesians 2:1. It says, and you have he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins. You see what it say in the NLT? Once you were dead because of your disobedience and your many sins. And when did they that disobedience began? I just read it during the book of Maccabees, during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, man. These Ephesians were the same descendants of those Israelites that became Greek, man. You see, and you have to understand this, you see. And if you don't understand that, you're going to be lost. You're going to try to attribute these books and Ephesians and the uncircumcised to the actual literal heathen who were already uncircumcised, man. You see, all the gods of the nations are idols, and they was given those idols from the Most High to worship. It was never for the Israelites to worship idols or to worship anything outside of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. But I just read the history of how many of the Israelites, wicked as Jake, was so forward therein that they made a covenant with the heathen and made themselves uncircumcised, man. All right. And now this is Paul in Ephesians reaching out to those Israelites, man. And pretty much when you're reading in the New Testament, now, not every single instance where you see the word Gentile or heathen is referring to the Israelites that became heathens, but sometimes it's referring to the actual heathen. But you have to understand the context and when those things apply. You can't just try to, every time you hear Gentile or Greek or they try to use, there's no difference between the Jew nor Greek, try to attribute it to actual blood clot heathens, man. You have to understand that Israelite, can become not through their lineage, not, through their bloodlines, but carnally, they can become Gentiles if they partake and live and do the things that the Gentiles do. And Paul's going to reiterate that. Excuse me. This is made alive in the Mashiach. It says, Ephesians 2:1, and you have he quickened, who were dead in trespasses and sins. And again, who are the only ones that can sin? Who was the law given to? The Israelites, man. And I just read in Maccabees how these wicked ass Jakes blatantly sinned against Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, man. It says, wherein in times past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. You see, among whom also we all had our conversation in times past in the lust of the flesh, in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desire of the flesh and of the mind. And this is ultimately, what Jake was participating in when they took on the customs of the Greek, because that's how the heathens roll, man. All right. These heathens just roll, everything that the customs and the gods that the heathens worship is all about the lust of the flesh and orgies and having sex and, just fulfilling whatever desire that you want, eating whatever you want, sleeping with, having orgies, worshiping false gods, drinking blood, eating things strangled, all type of bullshit that the Israelites was caught up in when they became uncircumcised and joined themselves to the heathen, man. And this is what Paul is saying, that, you had your times past, when you didn't know who the hell you were, when you were totally living as a Roman and as a Greek and as a goddamn heathen. It says, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But the Most High, who is rich in mercy, for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together by Hamashiach. By grace you are saved. You see? So like I said earlier, when Yahweh Shai shed his blood, it opened up salvation and repentance to the uncircumcised Israelites that had fallen away. You see, this wasn't, when Paul was writing this letter, it was directly to those Ephesians that were those Israelites living in that land, that had heard the gospel, that had faith in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, that was coming back to their understanding of who they were. You see? It says, and have raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, that in the ages to come he might show the exceeding riches of his grace and his kindness toward us through Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of the Most High. You see? And it says, not of works, lest any man should boast. You see, because you had a lot of those Israelites that was waking up, that was, they was trying to force the law. You got to keep the law. You got to keep the law. This is how you're going to be saved. You got to, they was forcing it down their throat. They wasn't allowing them to just, slowly build themselves up. And, eventually, once you come into this truth, you don't just force the law down nobody's throat. It's a process. It takes time. But when they heard, it was mainly about their faith and then believing in the salvation of Yahweh Shai. You see, it says, for we are his workmanship, created in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai unto good works, which the Most High hath before ordained that we should walk in them. It says, wherefore remember, here's the point, wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, you see, they became Gentiles, man. I just read it in the book of Maccabees. You see, it says when you became Gentiles in the past. Let's look up this word Gentiles, because I know they'd be going off on some of these definitions, but we got to, it's good to see the word for Gentiles here. The word is ethnos. It says a multitude, whether of men or of beasts, associated or living together. a company, troop, swarm, a multitude of individuals of the same nature or genus. You see, and this is the correct definition, because why? They were all Israelites, man. Even though they were being called uncircumcised, even though they was living after the Greek customs, not keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, it still didn't change the fact that they were Israelites, man. You know, they were the people of the Most High. They were just living commonly. They was living as heathen, but they were still lineage wise Israelites, man. The holy people. And it says the human family, whatever. It says a tribe, nation, people group. And this is where they go off, right? In the Old Testament, foreign nations not worshiping the true God, pagans, Gentiles, you see? And oh, you scared me, man. It says Paul used the term for Gentile Christians, you see, but this is where they get confused and they'll try to say, see, the Christians, the Gentiles, not knowing that those Gentiles or who they were calling Christians were the Israelites, man. But it's here, verse 2, number 2, a multitude of individuals of the same genus, Salakia. All right, Salakia. All right. So it says here, you were Gentiles in the flesh, meaning what? You know, they was living like heathens in the flesh, you know, carnally, outwardly. But, you know, lineage wise, they were Israelites, man. And they were given the opportunity of salvation, man. They was given the opportunity to turn from those idols and to come out of that Gentile state of mind and return to the living God, come back to their true nationality. It says, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands. And who was let's read this in the NLT. It says, Ephesians 2:11, don't forget that you Gentiles used to be outsiders. And what made them outsiders? I just read it. Oh, where did it go? All right. I just read it here. You see? Let me go down here to 48. What did it say that the Israelites did? It says, where is it? Yep. It says that it says, yes, many of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. You see what they do? They left their kids uncircumcised and they forgot about the law. What does it say here? It says, in those days went out Israel, wicked men. You see, it says, where was it? Here we go. It says, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. You see? And this is what Paul is saying right here. Wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, right? They wasn't actual Greeks by lineage. They wasn't Edomites by, you know, through their bloodlines, but in the flesh, you know? They were being called Gentiles in the flesh. By who? By the Israelites that didn't sell out, that kept the law, statutes, and commandments. You know, the Pharisees, the scribes, the high priests, the Israelites that were still in Jerusalem looked down upon those Israelites that had sold out and that became uncircumcised in the flesh. But again, it still didn't change the fact that they were Israelites. It says, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time you were without Hamashiach. You see, talking about these Israelites being aliens from let's look at this word commonwealth. You see, they were aliens, strangers from the commonwealth, talking about those Israelite foreigners. The word is politia. It says the administration of civil affairs, a state or commonwealth, citizenship, the rights of a citizen. And remember, like I said, once you stop keeping the Sabbath, you don't circumcise yourself, you don't come up to keep the high holy days, you're cut off from Israel. Your citizenship is revoked. You're no longer a part of the commonwealth of Israel. You're totally cut off. You're forsaken. You're a no people. You're looked at as a heathen. You have no inheritance whatsoever amongst the commonwealth, or you know, you're no longer a part of the citizenship of the 12 tribes, man. You're completely outcasted and a goddamn heathen. You see, it says citizenship, concretely, a community, a commonwealth. Right. And this is why a lot of those Israelites was living out, you know, they weren't living in Jerusalem. You know, they were living all in these different areas, Ephesus, Corinth, you know, and you also had other Israelites that knew that they were Israelites that was living out in these different areas. But you had a lot of Israelites who was totally just out there, totally oblivious to who they truly were. And this is who Paul and the apostles was going out and bringing back. Yep, it says, don't forget that you Gentiles used to be outsiders. You were called uncircumcised heathens. You see? You was called uncircumcised heathens. Matter of fact, let me get this real fast. Oh no. Let me get this real fast. Let me get Tobit 13. Oh, let me do it like that. Let me do it like this. You see, and now you got these clowns out here trying to, every time you hear, oh yeah, the uncircumcised, that's the other heathen, that's the heathen nations. No, it's not, man. You damn clown. Yep, it says Tobit wrote a prayer of rejoicing. It said, blessed be the Most High that liveth forever, and blessed be his kingdom. For he doth scourge and have mercy. He leadeth down to hell and bringeth up again. Neither is there any that can avoid his hand. Here's the point. It says, confess him before the Gentiles, ye children of Israel, for he hath scattered us among them. There declare his greatness and extol him before all the living, for he is our Lord, and he is our power, our Father forever. You see? So he said, what? Confess him before the Gentiles because you are scattered among them. And this is what Paul was doing right here in Ephesus. He was declaring, preaching the Most High before the children of Israel that were scattered amongst the heathens. Yep, it says you were called uncircumcised heathens by the Jews. And these were Jews calling other Jews uncircumcised heathens. Because I just read it in Maccabees. What happened? Who were proud of their circumcision, even though it even though it affected only their bodies and not their hearts. You see, it says, in those days you were living apart from Hamashiach. You were excluded from citizenship among the people of Israel. You see, and that don't apply to the heathen. The heathen never had citizenship or inherited rights amongst the Israelites. So it only makes sense that they had to be talking to other Israelites because the heathen had never had any inheritance amongst the Israelites. You see, read that again. And in those days you were living apart from Hamashiach. When did that start? During the Greek captivity, going all the way up until the time that this letter was written to those Ephesians, which were the Israelites living as uncircumcised heathens, man. It says, and in those days you were living apart from Mashiach. You were excluded from citizenship among the people of Israel, and you did not know the covenant promises the Most High had made to them. And like I said, read the second covenant in Romans, the 8th chapter, and it's to the Israelites and the Israelites only. It says, you lived in this world without the Most High and without hope. It says, but now you have been united with Hamashiach Yahushai. Once you were far away from the Most High, but now you have been brought near to him through the blood of Hamashiach. You see? And this is what the blood of Yahushai did. It allowed these uncircumcised heathen Israelites, these Greek Israelites, these heathenistic living Israelites back into the commonwealth. They were able to be forgiven for their sins and for their trespass and their total apostasy, man. It says, for Hamashiach himself has brought peace to us. He united the Jews and the Gentiles, you see, and you can't get confused when you hear the Jews and Gentiles, because a lot of those Gentiles were Jews, man. Like I said, I just read it in Maccabees, what happened to them. Into one people when in his own body on the cross, he broke down the wall of hostility that separated us. And what basically separated the circumcision from the uncircumcision was the fact that the uncircumcision, those Israelites that were living as Greek and heathens, weren't keeping the laws, man. They totally fell off. They lost their citizenship. They were looked at as a no people, unredeemable, totally forsaken. And those Jews looked at those Israelite foreigners as, they had no chance whatsoever to ever come back to the Most High because they were still judging them according to the first covenant, which is like I read. Matter of fact, let me get that real fast. Cut off. See if it'll just pop up here. Look at this one. It says, let me read this. It says, and this is just one way that you can be cut off. Let's see something. It says Genesis 17:9, and God said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every child among you shall be circumcised, and ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations, he that is born in your house, or brought with money of any stranger which is not of thy seed. It says, he that is born in thy house, and he that is brought with thy money must needs be circumcised. And yes, you had if you had a heathen that that you brought as property, they had to be circumcised too. They couldn't just be around in there with a turtleneck on. Now, that don't mean because they were circumcised that they were going to receive salvation or they had any inheritance with the Israelites. It was just what was required if you had a heathen, living amongst you. See, it says this applies not only to members of your family, but also to the servants born in your household and the foreign born servant whom you have purchased. That don't mean that now all of a sudden they receive salvation and part of your inheritance and salvation, man. It's just, that was just the way the Lord set it up. It says, he that is born, I read that. It says, and the uncircumcised man child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. And that's talking about the Israelites. See, any male who fails to be circumcised will be cut off from the covenant family for breaking the covenant. He have broken my covenant. You see? And what did it say here? Let me go back here. What happened to the many of the Israelites? Oh, shit. Let me do this. Let me go back there. Where is it? No. I said in the Apocrypha. Yep. And it says what happened to the children? And it says, where was it? Yep, it says what? That they should leave also their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. So just right there alone, those children that was not circumcised, they were initially cut off from the commonwealth, man. They had no part. You see? So back in Ephesians 2:14, for Hamashiach himself has brought peace to us. He united the Jews and the Gentiles into one people when, in his own body on the cross, he broke down the wall of hostility that separated us. Again, which was what separated the Jews that knew that they were Jews from the Gentiles or the Israelite foreigners was the fact that one was sticking to the covenants, to the law. They were circumcised on the 8th day. They kept the high holy days. That's what separated the Israelite foreigners from the Jews that were in Jerusalem. But Yahushua, by shedding his blood, broke down that, and now they were allowed access back into the house, back to receive citizenship, to be forgiven. It says he did this by ending the system of law with its commandments and regulations, you see, because that's what caused those Jews to be casted away, to be a no people. You see, it says he did this by ending the system of law with his commandments and regulations. He made peace between the Jews and the Gentiles or the Israelite foreigners by creating in himself one new people from two groups. Together as one body, Hamashiach reconciled both groups to the Most High by means of his death on the cross, and our hostility towards each other was put to death because you had a lot of hostility. Well, let me show you. I'm going to show you. It says he brought this good news of peace to you Gentiles or you Israelite foreigners who were far away from him, and peace to the Jews who were near. Now all of us can come to the Father through the same Holy Spirit because of what Hamashiach has done. You see, it says what? So now you Gentiles are no longer strangers and foreigners. Ye are citizens along with all of the God's holy people. Ye are members of the Most High family, because those Israelites that fell off were always Israelites. Their bloodline and their lineage didn't change. They were just going off. They were just cut off. They were just they had no more citizenship and no they were outcasted. You see. It says, together we are his house, built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, and the cornerstone is Hamashiach Yahushua himself. We are carefully joined together in him, becoming a holy temple for the Lord. Through him, you Gentiles or Israelite foreigners are also being made part of this dwelling where the Most High lives by the Spirit. You see, and it all goes back to Abraham. You You see how Abraham was found faithful in uncircumcision? It was through his faith and his faith in the Most High and his obedience. And the same thing was opened up into these Israelite foreigners, man. All right. This is what let me see something. Yep, here we go. It says Galatians 4:3, it says, even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. But when the fullness of the time was come, the Most High sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law. You see? And the same for those so-called Gentiles, those Israelite foreigners, man. You see? Because even though they were going to hell off, hey, they still were Israelites. They still were, they still were under the covenant. They still was required of them to keep the law of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. Even though they were going off, it still was part of, it's still part of being an Israelite, man. And through Yahweh Shai shedding his blood, it was opened back up to these Israelites to come back to the Lord through faith. And through their faith, eventually they were going to start doing the works. They were going to stop worshiping idols, stop drinking things, stop drinking blood, going into these orgies, worshiping all these different gods and idols and the Queen of Heaven and all these, these idols that they were led unto. It says to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And that's what those Israelite foreigners received through the shedding of the blood of Yahushua. It says, and because ye are sons, the Most High hath sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son, and if a son, then an heir of the Most High through Hamashiach. Howbeit then, when ye knew not the Most High, ye did service unto them which by nature are no gods. You see? Like I said, I just read that in Maccabees, you see? And Paul was reiterating, how they went off and why, and how when they was worshiping those gods, they were under this system of service unto them which by nature are no gods. And they was worshiping all type of fucking gods, man. Jupiter, Zeus, Artemis. Like I said, they was doing all type of wickedness, man, being caught up in orgies. Some of them was all caught up in the Olympic Games. A lot of them was uncircumcised. They was just completely wilding the hell out, man, because what they didn't, they fell away. But once they heard this gospel, and once Yahweh Shai shed his blood, Paul was going to them, letting them know that, look, now you can be forgiven. Now you have to hear this gospel, believe in Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, and come out of that shit, man. Come back to being who you are, which is an Israelite, a son of God. It says, but now after that ye have known the Most High, or rather are known of him, or known of the Most High, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto you desire again to be in bondage, right? Because you had some of them who was losing hope and losing faith, and was considering going back to that heathenistic way, man. You see? So so he was just warning them, hey man, now that you've this beautiful door has been opened up unto you, don't fuck around and go back into the beggarly elements, going back into this Gentile heathenistic lifestyle, man. Remain faithful, stay true to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. All right, and this is 1 Corinthians 12:1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I will not have you ignorant. And again, this is Paul speaking to the Corinthians, which are these Israelite foreigners, man. These are the Israelites living in Corinth that was waking up to the truth. It says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I will not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto those dumb idols, even as you were led. And I explained that in the book of Maccabees. In the NOT, it says, ye know that ye were still pagans. You were led astray and swept along in worshiping speechless idols. And again, a lot of wicked Israelites willingly consented. And you had a lot of Israelites that was forced converted by the sword, man, that was afraid of the fear of death from the Antiochus and his army and his military and the Greek captivity. It says, wherefore I give you to understand that no man speaking. Oh, yeah, but that was the point I wanted. You know that you were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, man. You see? Let's see something. Yep, let's get this one here, because like I said, a lot of these, the Jews, they knew that those Israelites that Paul was bringing into the temple weren't actual heathens. But again, remember, they were cut off. They were no people. That's why they was pissed off at Paul when he was bringing those Israelite foreigners to the temple. You see, but again, the Jews looked at those Israelite foreigners as uh, 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 you know, unreconcilable, man. They was like, look, why are you bringing these fucking sellout heathen niggas? Hey, there's no way that they can step foot in here. They've abandoned, their citizenship. They're abandoned the Commonwealth. They looked at them as heathens who could never come back into the temple. But Paul, once they had faith and they were, once Yahweh shed his blood and he knew that they were able to come back in, Paul was bringing them around again to what? To bring them back to the Commonwealth, to bring them back to the Most High. But those Jews at Jerusalem was like, oh, hell fucking no. But let's check this out. And again, Paul is not crazy. Paul was a doctor in the law. He would not bring literal actual heathen into the temple because they knew how how the temple worked, how you had the court of the Gentiles. They couldn't come in to certain parts of the holy temple, man. And Paul knew that, but he wasn't bringing actual heathen. He was bringing actual Israelites that was coming back into the fold. And it says, Acts 11:1, and the apostles and brethren that were in Judea heard that Gentiles had also received the word of the Most High. And I've already explained who those Gentiles were. And when Peter was come up to Jerusalem, they that were of the circumcision contended with him. You see, it says in the NLT, but when Peter arrived back in Jerusalem, the Jewish believers criticized him, saying, thou wentest into men uncircumcised and didst eat with them. You see, and those uncircumcised men were those Israelite foreigners that was coming back to their nationality, that had received faith through Yahweh sacrifice, man. It says, saying thou wentest into, remember, there was a no Israelite before, Yahweh shed his blood and, and they can be forgiven. It was being brought back in. They wouldn't be caught dead with one of those Israelites, with a Greekified Israelite or with a Israelite living as a heathen, man. They had hella disdain and hatred for them, man. So they thought Peter and them was bringing, these bugged out Jake into the temple, but they didn't understand, how they had received the word of the Most High, how Yahweh blood had opened the door back open unto them to come back into the Commonwealth. It says, saying, thou wentest into men uncircumcised and didst eat with them. But Peter rehearsed the matter from the beginning and expounded on it by order unto them, saying, I was in the Joppa city praying. I was in a trance and saw a vision. Yeah, and he explains how he saw, the thing, the vessel coming down, knit at the four corners. How it told him to kill and eat. And Peter said, I never ate anything that was common or unclean. But it was just, explaining how those Israelite foreigners were going to be able to come back into the fold, how they was going to be able to be cleaned up and be, accepted back to their nationality, man. You see, so you have to understand these things. All right, let me get this right here. This is Isaiah 52:1. It says, awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion, put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city, for henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. You see, and this is talking about the actual heathen, man. And the time is going to come to where they're never going to be able to come in unto us or put us in captivity or lead us astray or cause us to go off or to go into captivity and be forced to worship their gods and totally just, become apostates and fall away from Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. You see, and this is what was happening to those Israelite foreigners when Yahweh Shai shed his blood. You see? It says, shake thyself from the dust, arise and sit down, O Jerusalem, loose thyself from the bands of thy neck, O captive daughter of Zion. You see? Let's read this in the NLT verse 2. It says, rise from the dust, O Jerusalem, sit in a place of honor, remove the chains of slavery from off your neck, O captive daughter of Zion. And what happened when our people went into these exiles, into these different countries? They started worshiping the gods of the heathen, man. They, some of them, broke off. A lot of them started worshiping the other gods, worshiping false idols, sacrificing their daughters and children to these goddamn demons, man. It says, for this is what Yahweh, ye have sold yourselves for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money. You see, Didn't I just read that? Let's read that again, man. It said they sold themselves to do mischief. Did it say that here? It says, it says, and in those days that went out of Israel, wicked men saying, let us make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed, blah, blah, blah. It says, and certain of the people were so forward therein that they went to the king who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. You see, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. You see? And they sold themselves for nothing, because what did they ultimately gain out of joining themselves unto the heathen? Captivity, death, catching pure fucking hell, man. It wasn't beneficial. It didn't benefit them anything, man. It just put them in a worse and worse and more hellish conditions. It says, for thus saith Yahweh, ye have sold yourselves for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money. For thus saith the Lord my power, my people went down aforetime into Egypt to sojourn there, and the Assyrian oppressed them without cause. Now therefore, what have I here, saith Yahweh, that my people is taken away for naught? That they that rule over them make them to howl, saith Yahweh, and my name continually every day is blasphemed. You see? And that's what those Israelites that joined themselves to Antiochus did, man. You see? It says, therefore my people shall know my name, therefore they shall know in that day that I am he that doth speak, because behold, it is I. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publishes peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publish salvation, that saith unto Zion, thy power reigneth. You see? And that's basically what happened to those Israelite foreigners, man. Those Greekified Israelites in the New Testament. And it's the same thing that's happening unto us now. Because all of us here in America, we didn't know that we were Israelites until the Spirit of the Most High came down upon Abba Bivens and, the elders of our elders. And, Yahweh Shai loosed the seals of the book. And we had to be brought back and have our eyes reopened, man. You see? And now we're living in that. And now we're waking up to the hell we are. We're putting away the idols. We're putting away all of the bullshit. And now, we're being brought back to the Commonwealth and to our true nationality, man. You see? It says, thy watchmen shall lift up the voice, with the voice together shall they sing. And what are we singing this new song? The truth. It says, for they shall see eye to eye when Yahweh shall bring again Zion. Break forth into joy, sing together, ye waste places of Jerusalem. For Yahweh have comforted his people, he have redeemed Jerusalem. You see? And then eventually, Yahweh Shai is going to come back and literally deliver his elect from this current situation that we're in right now. It says, Yahweh hath made bare his holy arm in the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God. Depart ye, go ye out from thence, touch no unclean thing, go ye out from the midst of her, and be ye clean that bear the vessels of the Lord. For ye shall not go out with haste, nor by flight, for Yahweh will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rewarder. You see? Hey, and that's what we're getting ready to receive in these last days, man. So you got to understand that those uncircumcised Israelites in the New Testament, man, those were Israelites. They weren't heathens. They weren't the actual Gentile nations that were being opened up unto salvation and redemption through the sacrifice and bloodshedding of Yahweh Shai, man. It was the Israelites that fell away during the Greek captivity, that became Hellenized, that became Greeks and bug outs. They were the ones that were being the gospel was being preached to, and the gospel of reconciliation was being opened up to, man. So with that, Lord willing, that was edifying. Lord willing, it all made sense, and you were fed through the Spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, man. So hey, the water Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai for putting the Spirit in me to do this lesson. Lord willing, you were edified. Shalom.